Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
And what is up, you guys? The New York Mets rained out today, and honestly, I don't have a problem with that because it has not been very good for the New York Mets recently. And having the off day yesterday, getting another one here today with the rain out, honestly, my mental health has not been any better in the last 3 weeks than it could be at this moment right now. Just kidding, all jokes aside, disappointing. Was hoping that today would maybe finally be the day that the Mets start getting back on course and heading in the right direction, but we will have to wait. Unfortunately, we're left with the sour taste of these highlights right here from Sunday's game where the Mets were swept out of Pittsburgh, embarrassed out of Pittsburgh, but that doesn't mean we're not going to still go live here today on Tony Metro. It's going to be a little bit different, obviously, with no game to recap, but we're going to talk about a couple things regarding this team. Number one, Eric Chavez, the Mets hitting coach, speaks to the media, an exclusive from New York Post. If you didn't want to pay for it and get past that paywall, don't worry, because I did. So we're going to talk about what he had to say on the offensive struggles from this team, plus an injury update on Mets ace Kodai Senga, when he might be returning to this team, something they sorely need. So let's get into it. But before I do that, guys, I'm Tony Metro. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I do daily Mets content, post-game recap after every single Mets game. Be sure to leave this video a like. Really appreciate that. It goes a long way toward helping me out here. And you can follow me on all my other platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Links to those are in the description below. Also, if you want to call into the show, you can do that. Go to the link for Discord in the description of this video, and I will put you in when I am ready to take live calls. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's get into it. Obviously, Mets were rained out today. They are going to make it up tomorrow as part of a doubleheader with Milwaukee. And let's just say I'm very fearful because it is hard to sweep a doubleheader. As we know, it actually happens more often than you think. But that also could mean the Mets are getting swept by the Brewers tomorrow, who clearly have the pitching advantage in this one. Start off with Freddie Peralta in one of those games tomorrow, and then their rookie phenom, Mazeroski, who has an ERA of 1.53. And meanwhile, the Mets have Clay, Holmes, and Blade Tidwell pitching in this series. So it is not exactly a great get-right spot for the Mets taking on the Brewers. So that is tomorrow's problem that we will have to worry about, not today's. We will have post-game recaps after each of those games, so be sure to tune in here. But let's talk a little bit about some newsworthy stuff that we had in Metsland today. So I'm going to switch over here. Let's make sure everything is good. Very nice. And if you could see, I was doing a little bit of research because earlier today, an article from the New York Post came out. Eric Chavez tells the Post what's behind the Mets' brutal hitting woes. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with me sharing this on my screen with you guys because, like I said, I had to pay for this. I did a little free trial, so I'm not actually going to pay for it. But this is how I'm going to try to share it, and we'll see if my video gets taken down or not. But you would think with the title of this video, exclusive, you have to get past the paywall. He's telling us what's behind the Mets' brutal hitting woes. This is a complete, absolute nothing burger. He does not say anything in this article that convinces me he has a plan to turn this around. And we've been saying this for weeks now. Like, yeah, we're pissed at Eric Chavez, but the bats obviously are the ones in the batter's box that need to get the job done. Eric Chavez doesn't go up there with a bat in his hand, but still the philosophy, the overall plan or lack thereof from this Mets lineup is concerning, especially when you look at a lineup that on paper is supposed to be as talented and as good as we thought it would be. And it is nowhere near that. Even when the Mets were playing like the best team in baseball and had the best record in baseball, we know the Mets offense was not living up to the expectations. Runners in scoring position this year, 217 average. That is the second worst mark in all of baseball. The only team with a worse average with runners in scoring position this year than the Mets are the Chicago White Sox. That is not ideal Most certainly not. And we know a big reason for it is because we've gotten almost nothing out of the bottom of the lineup. So I wanted to just say all of that before ripping Eric Chavez. So now that that is out of the way, let's do it. So here's the article. As the Mets lineup woes continue, Eric Chavez carries a heavy burden trying to find answers. Chavez, one of the team's 2 hitting coaches, well, that right there gave me pause because yes, we know that there is Chavez and there is Jeremy Barnes. Chavez is your more typical hitting coach that kind of just goes through mechanics and stuff. Jeremy Barnes is the guy that is more fixated on the analytics and launch angle and things of that nature. But when they said one of the team's 2 hitting coaches, it gave me pause because that's like the old saying in the NFL or about football. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. And that's how I feel about this situation with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. 2 hitting coaches, and it looks like they don't have any because of how this lineup has been so far this year. 13 losses in 16 games. They have underperformed lately in all departments. The most inexplicable aspect might be the lineup, given the caliber of players, starting with Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso. Adam, what is up? They're the Jets 2.0 because they're good on paper and bad on the field. Yeah, well, I mean, the Mets have given us more than the Jets did during that 2-year run with Aaron Rodgers. My goodness, I can't even, don't get me started. They just put out a tweet today saying they play football next month. The last thing I need in my life right now is to be watching the New York Jets. I got enough on my plate with the Mets at the moment, Adam. But let's see. The Mets began Monday ranked 29th in Major League Baseball with runners in scoring position, as I just said a moment ago. They got outscored 30-4 by the Pirates in that series, of course. Paul Skeens wasn't even on the mound during that series. There were absolutely no excuses. But here's the quotes from Chavez that really just cemented it even further that it is clear this guy does not have a plan to turn things around. He says, quote, "It just needs to get better. You kind of think there's too many good hitters and players for us to underperform as a group, but it's like we're halfway through the season and you would like to say, oh, it's going to turn, and you think it's going to turn, but at some point you just don't want to ever overreact and go too hard and make drastic changes." Okay, so you probably should be wanting to make drastic changes right now because right now this offense looks like the worst in all of baseball, and they're not far off from that mark if we're talking about hitting with runners in scoring position. You just scored 4 runs in a 3-game series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So maybe drastic changes is what you should be thinking about doing, Eric Chavez. He said, even talked about his job security, and he mentions that right here, David Stearns, the one thing he's shown me is to have patience. I don't have it. I am more of an overreactor where I want things hammered down. But as far as addressing it, the players know that we're better than this as a group. Okay, great. So you still haven't explained what the problem is with the Mets offense. All you're saying is they're not performing. Yeah, we all know that. We watch the games. We are very aware they're not performing. Isn't that your job as the hitting coach to, I don't know, try to figure that out? Try to think of some different ways to get them going? Isn't that the whole purpose of a hitting coach? To work on those kinds of things? He has literally no answers for anything here. He said individually some of them are doing some pretty good stuff, but just as a group we kind of underperform. Yes, once again, Mr. Captain Obvious, thank you for telling us that. Eric, who could have not predicted this was going to be the case. He said maybe it's messaging. What can we improve on? What can we change without drastically changing? I think you should be wanting drastic change, shouldn't you? I understand he's saying as far as their, approach to delivering the message or whatever it is that he does as hitting coach. Really, I'm still not even sure. It's like that quote from Office Space where they go, what exactly is it that you do here? Because I don't know what he does here. And it doesn't sound like Eric Chavez really knows what he does here on a day-to-day basis. He says, this team is built to beat good pitching. It's just a matter of being consistent. Good pitching. Well, they couldn't even do anything to beat the very subpar pitching of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Mitch Keller, the only real known commodity that was on the mound for them this weekend, and they absolutely shut the Mets down. They do have a good bullpen. I'll give them that. The Pirates have a sneaky good bullpen, and hopefully the Mets will be able to sneak a guy or two away from them at this year's deadline. that is if the Mets are even going to be buyers at the trade deadline. The way things have been going, that may not be the case. But really, there's just nothing here from him. I mean, he goes on to talk about Kevin Long, who the Mets had as a hitting coach in 2015. He credits him as being one of the best hitting coaches, if not the best, in all of baseball, and he still gets crapped on by fans. So he is not immune to it, but Chavez certainly is far more deserving of hearing it from the fans, and apparently that has been happening. I personally would not go out of my way to ever say something like that to him. I do crap on him in my reports here, but that's different. I ain't going after somebody personally. That's just kind of weird. But he says about his time here and as far as his job security, Adam, he says he's Nico Harris 2.0, no plan, fire Eric. 100%, man. I think there's no plan. It's got to be, he's got to go. Lulu, hi, how are you? Good to see you. I can't tell what that little thing is. It looks like a little envelope you just dropped in the chat. What does that mean? Oh, there we go. Sweet. Hi, Lulu. 25 XP. I have no idea what any of that means, but cool. Appreciate you sending that over here. Guys, hold on. I'm going to take a sip. This is actually one of our new sponsors here, so I'm excited about that. Kinetic Energy. This is just really good for clarity, focus, gives you good energy, no jitters. There's no caffeine in it at all. So I'm going to have a link for this if you guys want to check it out soon. I will have that posted in the bio of my videos moving forward, but I need a sip. I'm a little parched. Oh, good to the last drop. Yeah, that's what we like. I like that stuff before a workout, but I mean, honestly, you could drink it any time of day. And again, no caffeine, so it's not going to mess with you if you can't handle caffeine well, if you try to get to sleep early. But Chavez talks about his job security. Essentially, he goes, they say it's going to change and to stay with it. You guys are working hard. I appreciate that from them. He's talking about the front office here. He says, but I like to win. I know I'm in the hitting department, but I just consider myself a baseball guy. I love all aspects, but I also know we need to get better offensively. That's it for me. And that's for me and Jeremy to figure out on our end. Oh, it's a wave. Okay, I got you now, Lulu. D-Rails, what is up, man? How you doing? Appreciate you tuning in. D-Rails is a main staple of these streams. He is always popping in the chat. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Look, I don't think Eric Chavez is an idiot. I don't think Eric Chavez is not a good baseball mind. I mean, he had a really, really solid career as a player. But as we've talked about before, sometimes those guys just don't turn into great coaches or great, people to give advice to other players because they were so naturally talented that they don't actually know how to articulate those things to other players. So I'm not saying that Eric Chavez is the worst hitting coach I've ever seen, but when the offense looks the way that it has now for the past really whole season now, for the past 3 months, let's be honest about it, it's going to get us riled up and we have to figure something out, and there's got to be someone, and I'm not trying to scapegoat Eric Chavez, but it just doesn't make sense that as many good players in this lineup could be underperforming so badly to the back of their baseball card, and it leads us to this conversation about Eric Chavez and what he does. So let's take a look at the Mets over the last 3.5+ seasons with Eric Chavez as the team's hitting coach. So his first year was under Buck Showalter in 2022, and the Mets scored 772 runs that season. You could see they finished 5th in total offense that year. They were still almost 100 runs behind the Dodgers in that category, but the Dodgers are just ridiculous. They always have been, so it is what it is. Home runs, 171 that year. And so that was like one of the concerns about that 2022 lineup. Like, we know that they scored runs, obviously the 5th most in baseball, but a lot of it was smoke and mirrors. A lot of it was like weird plays of the ball, like bouncing off the bag or something crazy like that. Obviously not in every instance, but that was a really weird season for the Mets. And then they fizzled out there toward the end, got just lambasted by the Padres in that wild card round at Citi Field. So again, he's shown that he obviously can take a lineup and make them one of the top 5 scoring lineups in all of baseball. Here's 2023 though. Now this year is obviously a little more difficult to judge because obviously they got off to that bad start. The pitching wasn't good, and then they ended up selling off at the deadline, but really none of the bats. So hold on, let me go to the chat here real quick. Lulu, I don't want him fired, just reassigned. I don't know if that's going to work for him. Honestly, he's probably be like, wait a second. Like, could you imagine if they're like, we don't want to fire you, but we're going to demote you from your position? Most people would would be like, I'm good. I'm going to get out of here. But I don't know. Maybe anything to get him out as the hitting coach. Again, I think it is weird that they have two hitting coaches with him and Jeremy Barnes, where he's more on the analytical side and Chavez is on the more traditional side of being a hitting coach. Again, I feel like it's that whole thing with being quarterbacks in the NFL. If you got two quarterbacks, you don't have any. So I think it's a really weird situation with that whole thing. So this is 2023. Again, more difficult to kind of analyze because the Mets ended up selling off at the deadline, basically punted on the rest of the season, but they didn't trade away anybody really of note from that lineup except for Tommy Pham, which again was just a drop in the bucket for this lineup. But they end up with the 11th worst offense that season, 717 runs, but really it's not too far off from what they did in 2022. They scored 772 runs the year before that, but obviously not a great look there. They finish I guess that would make them 19th in total runs scored. Home runs were actually up quite a bit to 215 that season, but still somehow managed to score less runs, which again tells me 2022 was such a smoke and mirrors type of season from that lineup. You got the really good year from Pete, the really good year from Lindor, but outside of that, like, you didn't see big strides with any of the prospects. They really hadn't come up at that moment yet. You had Eduardo Escobar playing third base mostly. You had Jeff McNeil having his batting title season. So I don't know how exactly to analyze 22 and 23 other than they hit more home runs in 23 but scored about 50 less runs. And then we go to last year, and the Mets were a pretty solid offensive team last year. They were 7th most runs in baseball, 768. And they hit 207 homers. And obviously that's on the back of Francisco Lindor finishing runner-up in the National League MVP vote. And then you had a really bad season from Pete Alonso, and yet they were still able to put up these types of numbers. So it's not all been bad with Eric Chavez as the team's hitting coach. But lately, of course, it's only been uglier. And you would think after signing Juan Soto to his near $1 billion contract, that this lineup was going to get better. And then you look at the 3 prospects, really 4 if we want to also count Mark Vientos. I'm going to leave Ronnie Mauricio out of this for the time being just because he has not played baseball in a year and a half, and obviously tough task jumping right back in to hit major league pitching. But Francisco Alvarez has went backwards since Chavez's arrival. Brett Beatty has obviously not performed at a big league standard to stick to this point. And then you have Mark Vientos, who had that amazing season last year, 27 homers, clutch bombs throughout October and the playoffs. And now this year looks like a total mess. Pre-2024 second half, Mark Vientos is back in the chat. So I'm concerned not only for what the lineup is doing right now, but the potential harm that is happening to these can't miss prospects, these guys that we all thought were going to come up, maybe not be superstars, but at the very least by this point in their careers would have carved out clear roles on a big league roster. You cannot say that about any of the guys I just named. Francisco Alvarez's MLB future hangs in the balance as he is back in AAA now. You got Brett Beatty, who for 3 years has yo-yoed between here and Syracuse and still does not seem to be a clear MLB starter or even a bench bat. Then you have Mark Vientos' situation. Who knows what's going on there? He has looked really bad over the weekend. He looked really bad over the weekend in his return from his injured list stint. And then I won't mention Luisangel Acuna because obviously he came over from the trade with Texas. They had their hands on him before. Who knows what their development system was doing with him and how that might differ from what the Mets are doing in the minors and what Chavez has tried to instill on him. But obviously, Luisangel Acuna did not look good this year for the Mets either. So I am concerned not only for the actual lineup right now, but also for what's happening to these prospects and if Chavez is actually negatively impacting them to the point where they may never be able to recover and live up to those expectations as former top prospects. So again, The numbers overall, they're not terrible under his tutelage. 5th in runs scored in 2022. 2023, a little bit of an outlier. They hit more home runs. They didn't score significantly less runs, but obviously they were well below league average, the 19th worst in baseball. And then last year, they were the 7th best offense in baseball. Hit more home runs. They scored more runs that year than they did in 2022. So it's like the guy clearly has, a solid baseball background, a really great career, but is he actually doing anything to improve these hitters? Is he actually instilling anything on them to help them correct things and get back on course? Nothing from that article that we just went through tells me that. It's just filled with cliches. We've got to be better. We're better than this. It's going to turn. We think it's going to turn. We got to make changes. There's nothing that I get from this article that tells me that Eric Chavez actually has a solid plan to get the Mets offense back on track. Let me go to the chat here real quick. Stoney, what's up, man? How you doing? He says, what's up, my friend? Sorry I haven't been on your streams. Extremely busy with life in general. Just wanted to say hi. Thank you, Stoney. Good to hear from you, man. No need to apologize. Appreciate you checking in here. Let's see. Tony, are you glad the Mets got another off day tonight to think about, what does that say? Think it over to get on? Oh, to think it over? Yeah, no, I am. I said in the beginning of this stream that my mental health is at the best it has been in the last 3 weeks, with the Mets not playing yesterday and with them getting rained out today. But how quickly that could change tomorrow, because if the Mets get swept in the doubleheader by Milwaukee tomorrow, that's going to be bad. That will be 5 straight losses. They will continue to fall in the National League East standings. They are currently 2 games back after Philly shut out San Diego yesterday. The Phillies also getting rained out today, so they will have a doubleheader tomorrow as well with the Padres. But yeah, I am happy to have a little bit of respite from watching the Mets these last 2 days. Though I will say, I did tell myself in the afternoon, and I was like, I'm excited to watch the Mets today. I'm a, what do they call that when you're just a glutton for pain? I can't think of a masochist. Yeah, I'm a masochist for the Mets. It's unhealthy. Let's see. Stoney or Adam, you're good. Thanks. You're welcome. Hey, Stoney. Hi, Explosive. There we are. Explosive Diarrhea in the chat. We appreciate it. I love that name, man. Every friggin' time it gets me. He said, I saw earlier Heyman posted Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Yep. Even Adam Schefter, the NFL reporter, tweeted Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Like, we just can't have a day off. We just can't have a day off from LOL Mets. By the way, guys, I am watching Pittsburgh and St. Louis. Pittsburgh may actually be better than we thought, okay? Because they took it to St. Louis yesterday, and right now it's 0-0, but they look pretty good. Playing some solid defense, hitting the ball a little bit. Still 0-0, like I said, but Paul Skeens is on the mound for them. But maybe not enough credit for those Pittsburgh Pirates. Anyway, guys, tell me, how are you feeling about Eric Chavez? What do you take from this article? Again, me personally, I think it's a nothing burger. I don't think he said anything that is inspiring me to believe that there is a turnaround on the horizon, but let me know how you guys are feeling in the chat. If you guys are just tuning in, be sure to subscribe if you're not already. Please leave this video a like. I really appreciate that. It goes a long way toward helping out the channel. But Eric Chavez was not the only thing that we got news on today from the Mets. We also heard that Kodai Senga faced hitters on Sunday and is scheduled to throw a bullpen and do pitcher fielding practice tomorrow. So Mendoza would say it's possible Senga goes on a rehab assignment after that if all goes well. Go ahead, give this a listen, guys.
And what's the plan for Senga and McGill this week? So Senga faced hitters on Sunday. So he had an up and down live VP. He's scheduled to throw a bullpen tomorrow and do some PFP. And then we'll see where we at after that bullpen. But he already faced hitters on Sunday here. So that's another good step in the right direction there. And who else you said? McGill still, he's still doing exercises. I think he's got an imaging coming up. He's definitely feeling better, but not throwing yet.
Is it possible Senga can go on a rehab after that bullpen? If everything
It's possible. It's possible, but again, we'll see how he responds after the bullpen tomorrow.
And then what's the plan for Senga?
Okay, so good news on Senga, obviously. We know that it was a low-grade hamstring injury. They were saying that it would maybe be like 3 to 4 weeks, best case scenario. It sounds like that's pretty much exactly what we believed it was going to be. If he misses, or if he does his bullpen tomorrow and does his PFPs tomorrow, then he might begin a rehab assignment, just like Carlos Mendoza just said, and that's great. Maybe 2 starts is probably my guess, which, let's just say maybe he's coming back then July 15th, July 18th, somewhere in the middle of this month. So that would be great. And that would also be great not only because, one, we need Kodai Senga pitching for this team again. He was just dominant this year. The Mets need to get better starting pitching than they have been lately. But 2, it will probably let the Mets get a gauge, get an idea on how they need to approach this trade deadline. I think regardless of if Senga is totally healthy and good and on the mend and pitching again for this team, they still need to get a starting pitcher at the trade deadline. It doesn't need to be an ace. It doesn't need to be Sandy Alcantara. It doesn't need to be Jacob deGrom, that I know a lot of Mets fans are talking about if he is even available. But the Mets need a dependable innings eater for this rotation, because we know Sean Manaea is supposed to get back the end of May. It is now the end of June. It's actually the first day of July, and he is yet to throw a pitch for this team. Then he has a setback with the loose bodies in his elbow. He gets the cortisone shot for it. He made another rehab start yesterday. I believe it went well with Binghamton, but still, you can't just think, well, they're healthy now, they won't ever get hurt again. That is obviously not the case. Major league pitching, starting pitching specifically, it is like the most injured position in all of sports. So I think the Mets need to be seeking one of those veteran inning eater kind of guys for this rotation. But I'm not talking Paul Blackburn, guys like that. Like, we need a legitimate guy that will stick in their rotation. So a lot of people have suggested reunions with a former Met or 2. And I mentioned Jacob deGrom. I don't think that's happening. Still really big contract. I don't even know if Texas wants to trade him or if deGrom would want to come back to New York. But Luis Severino is someone that Mets fans have suggested, and I have seen from some of the MLB insiders. So maybe that would be a fit. Let's take a look at it. First, let me go to the chat over here. Red Bear Fox, what is up, my man? How you doing? Stoney says, Tony, I know it's Montas was second start. What do you think about trading him when he comes to the trade deadline? No one's going to trade for Frankie Montas. Number 1, he's not very good. Number 2, he is coming off that trade or that injury, and who knows what is left in the tank for the dude. And he is on a contract for next season as well at $17 million. I still am scratching my head about that signing from David Stearns. The dude is hit on more than not, but this one from the get-go just did not seem to make a lot of sense. So I don't think anybody is going to be willing or interested in trading for Frankie Montas. And let's be honest, like, it's sad to say, but the Mets need Frankie Montas in a bad way right now. Like, we barely have enough guys to fill out this rotation. This starting pitching depth has been tested really, really badly over these last 3 weeks. You lose Senga, you lose McGill, who, again, we didn't even want in the rotation either. Griffin Canning ruptures his Achilles. He is done for the year. Still don't have Sean Manaea back. The Mets need Frankie Montas. As much as it pains me to say it, they need him, and they need him to pitch closer to what he did in his season debut against Atlanta than the garbage that we saw on Sunday. 5 runs in the first inning, just putting the Mets behind the 8 ball immediately out of the gate. So, yeah, the Mets need him, and it's unfortunate, but that is the situation that we are in right now. Adam, it's usually when a relief pitcher warms up before they go and pitch, but I mean like a bullpen for like pitching against hitters. It could be like a simulated game kind of thing. I'm not sure. They didn't specify. My guess is it's probably just a normal bullpen that he threw. But yeah, I don't think they actually got into that or that Carlos Mendoza specified what it is. But good news for sure to hear this on Senga. Hopefully, like I said, I think the timetable is like middle of this month, maybe July 18th, somewhere around there. That's 17 days from now. Obviously, he needs his 5 full days of rest between starts. I think you give him 2 of those. It really hasn't been that long since he pitched, and it was not an arm injury. So I think that Senga is probably going to be back in the next 2 weeks, which is great news for the Mets. Let's see. Pantris says, about the more home run year in 23, you have to remember Chavez does not believe in the home run ball. He only believes hitting the ball, and where it goes is where it goes. He said this in an interview. Yes, very good point, Pantris. So Chavez doesn't really believe in, launch angle and all of that stuff. I mean, dude, it's prehistoric. How could you not be buying into that stuff? That is what the Dodgers do better than anybody else, is teach their hitters those kinds of swings. That's why you have a guy like Max Muncy, who was a complete flop nobody with Oakland. He goes to the Dodgers and he's one of the better left-handed power hitters in the game, because they've done a good job of incorporating that through their hitting coaches, from their front office on down the way to the hitters in that lineup. So I don't like it. I don't get it with Chavez. They have Jeremy Barnes to hopefully be teaching some of those things, but again, the two hitting coach thing, just it doesn't make sense to me. I really don't get it. Let's see. Red Bear Fox, I saw a ball pen. Okay, ballpoint pen. No, you're good, man. Explosive diarrhea. Mets could use these days off to clear some things up mentally and reset. Yeah, I mean, hopefully these guys are not wallowing in it. It's not fun to be sitting on a 3-game losing streak the way they got embarrassed out of Pittsburgh either. So, sometimes you do want to get back on that horse as quickly as possible. And other times, yeah, maybe it is good for a little mental rest. But I'd like to see the Mets get back in the win column before having these consecutive days off, but obviously not the case here today. Lulu says, I have to give Montas a chance. We've only seen him twice this season. Yeah, and I mean, the first start was good. He has a very different arm angle from what he has traditionally done throughout his career. I mean, he is way more over the top now than he was last season, so that's probably coming from the Mets pitching lab as they try to tinker with him like they've done with other guys as well. And of course, seen some success with them, namely Sean Manaea last year and Luis Severino, who we're going to get back to here in a second. I just want to finish up here with the chat. Red Bear Fox, I'm pretty confident Montas will be garbage. The problem is that they are stuck with him. Exactly right. I mean, no, I appreciate that, Stoney. There's no, there's nothing wrong. I'm just giving you, my opinion, and I don't think anybody is going to be interested in trading for Frankie Montas at this really ever. We are stuck with him for sure, but we need him at this point. Let's see, Adam. If they get swept again, wear a black shirt. Yeah, it might be the funeral for the Mets if they get swept by Milwaukee. I don't see an end in sight if they continue playing this way through the rest of the first half before the All-Star break. I mean, if they just continue to just stumble all the way through to the All-Star break, I don't see how it's going to turn around. You could bring back, the reincarnation of Babe Ruth and of Tom Seaver, and I don't know how you turn it around when they've been playing the way that they have been here lately. Let's see. Stoney says that's okay, Tony. All right, cool. So let's talk about some potential trade opportunities. And the guy I mentioned is Luis Severino, because some Mets fans and even some MLB insiders are suggesting that he could potentially be available at the deadline and that a reunion with the Mets would make sense. So things not going so great for Luis Severino out with the West Sacramento Athletics. He's pitching pretty well, much better than he was in the beginning of the season, but as we know, he signed a $67 million deal with the Athletics this offseason. That actually made him the highest paid player in their franchise history, but he's got some beef with that ballpark they're playing at. And that's why I called them the West Sacramento A's just now, because they are playing in that minor league stadium. Luis Severino has not pitched well there. Not many people have, whether they are on the A's or visiting players. 2.27 ERA on the road this year for Luis Severino, but at that minor league stadium in Sacramento, a 6.97 ERA for Louis. So it is not going well. The Athletics are now open to trading him after he continues to bash the environment in Sacramento, agitating the organization, Bob Nightingale writes. It may come as a surprise if he's still with the organization come August. So this could bode very well for the Mets if they're interested in reuniting with Luis Severino, because he has that $67 million deal on 3 years. But it's becoming pretty clear here, according to this article from Bob Nightingale, that the A's are very upset with him publicly bashing their facilities out there in Sacramento. They might be desperate just to get him off the roster, and that might make this a very sell low point on Luis Severino, where the Mets may not have to actually give a whole lot back in prospects. Now, I like that idea. It's frustrating because the Mets could have literally just signed him for money this offseason, and instead will be taking on some money and potentially sending out some prospects. But we know the A's are very money motivated. We know that they would probably be willing to give us the contract for a lesser prospect return, and that is something the Mets can obviously handle with Steve Cohen's pocketbook. But I think this could be a really good idea. I think that the A's are fed up with it. I think that they're going to be willing to just get Severino off their hands, and whatever deal financially helps them the most is what will get it done. So look, we might be talking about a deal where the Mets aren't even trading anybody in their top 20 or top 15. And if that is the case, Luis Severino would be a great fit to help this Mets rotation. He has been steady and reliable this year. He's had those struggles at home in their minor league facilities this season, but on the road, like I mentioned, has been solid, has a 2.27 ERA on the road. Obviously, if you just look at all of the numbers, they don't look so pretty there. 5.09 ERA, but again, it's ballooned because of that pitching environment in that minor league stadium. Last year with the Mets, Luis Severino gave us 182 innings over 31 starts. So far this year, hasn't missed a start, 18 on the season, already at 104 innings. The Mets would welcome that into their rotation with open arms right now. So I think this is a really good idea. Again, overall numbers don't look great. 5.09 ERA, but if you take away the starts in that minor league stadium where the ball just absolutely flies, it's having a pretty solid year. Pretty similar to what he did with the Mets last year. I mean, even better if we're just looking at those 7 road starts. So let's go to the chat. 99 over 22. We need to fire Mendoza and fire Chavez. Stoney says that's like no one would want Blackburn either. Yeah, nobody wants Paul Blackburn. Nobody wants Frankie Montas. They are our problems. But honestly, we need both of these dudes, which is incredible to say. Let's see. 99 over 22. We need to trade for a guy like Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly's not a bad idea. I mean, I know this dude's a Yankees fan, but he pops off in the chat and you talk like you're a Mets fan. So like, I'm with it. That's fine. Stoney says, me either. Explosive diarrhea. Those Blue Jays red jerseys today looked fire. Yeah, they were pretty sick for Canada. You know what was even sicker? George Springer hitting a grand slam in them off of the Yankees. Woo. Luke Weaver got taken yard. That was a brutal inning for the Yankees. I don't know if you guys caught it, but it was Mark Leiter Jr. coming in relief, gives up a runner, a base hit, and a walk. They pull him for Luke Weaver. It looks like a perfect strike 3 on a 3-2 count, but on a check swing, the backup catcher for the Yankees, J.C. Acera, is called for interference as the bat hit the glove. That loaded the bases, and then 4 pitches later, George Springer hit a grand slam, absolute nuke off of Weaver to break that open and make it 9-4. So, sorry, Yankees, but Blue Jays did look pretty stylish in those red threads. I'll give you that. But guys, what do you think? Would you be interested in returning a trade or in reuniting with Luis Severino, trading with the Athletics, who again, they sound like they are on the outs, these two. The A's are not happy about Luis Severino's comments on the minor league facilities that they are playing in this year. We know they made him the highest paid player in franchise history with the 3-year, $67 million contract that they handed him this offseason on the heels of a great bounce back year with the Mets in 2024. I think this is a slam dunk home run. I mean, we're talking about a team that is looking to get him off of their hands, a team that is money motivated and that just handed him this big contract. I think the Mets taking on the entirety of this contract would be able to help them get it done, push it over the finish line without having to trade back any top tier, high quality prospects in the Mets farm system. Immediately fills you in with your number 3, number 4 starter in this rotation. Who knows what's going to happen with Clay Holmes? He is far and away pitched more innings already this year than he ever has in his career, having been a reliever for the majority of it. So who knows what type of inning limit he's going going to be on as we get closer to October and down the stretch here in the regular season. You have the injury concerns with Manaea, with Kodai Senga. Tyler McGill is out. Not that we want him in the rotation, but might be a better option at this point than Paul Blackburn or Frankie Montas. So a lot of people are screaming and saying the Mets need an ace. The Mets need Sandy Alcantara. Go get a stopper and this and that. But honestly, I think the better way to go about it is to try to find a guy like Luis Severino. One of those veterans that takes the ball every fifth day. Sevy's perfect. He's obviously familiar with the organization. Had an amazing season, bouncing back from, a couple of poor years before that. I would love this trade if it were possible. Let's go to the chat over here. Stoney says, I'd go after Gallen if we could. So Zach Gallen is definitely someone whose name is being dangled out there as well. We're going to talk about him actually in a second. Let me finish here with the chat. Lulu, absolutely interested in a Sevy reunion. I was upset when they didn't re-sign him. I was too. I loved Sevy. I really, really did. I would love to see him come back. We'll see if that is possible. 99/22, you have to multiply the contract by 2 because of the luxury tax. That is a very good point. 99/22. The Mets will have to pay double on any money that they acquire at this year's deadline because of the luxury tax. They are over the luxury tax threshold, but it only means Steve Cohen needs to pay more out of his wallet. So it does not actually affect the Mets in terms of draft pick compensation or any of those details or as an organization, but it would mean Steve Cohen have to be willing to pony up the cash because it will be double whatever the Mets acquire in terms of dollars at this year's deadline. I know there's some money coming off the books next year though, so there might be an opportunity where the Mets can get back under the luxury tax in 2026 as they try to replan and figure out how they're going to move forward. But very good point, 99/22. If 99 is a Mets fan, also I'm all for it, Tony. That's what Stoney has to say. I don't know. I mean, that was a great point. Great point there. And you kind of have to be a Mets fan to be that tuned in and be thinking about that stuff. I wasn't even thinking about that. So I appreciate you bringing that up to me there, 99/22. Let's take a look at Zach Gallen as Stoney suggested, and we've heard Zach Gallen's name be out there. The Diamondbacks have not been having as good of a season as they probably thought they would be. They lost Corbin Burns for the season. They've lost their star closer for the season. Corbin Carroll was just put on the injured list. They are not completely out of the playoff race, but they already have 3 other really good teams ahead of them in their own division with the Dodgers, the Padres, and the surprising San Francisco Giants. So it is going to be a tall hill for them to climb. And I don't know if they have it in them to do it, especially with all of those injuries. But Zach Gallen is definitely someone that people are interested in potentially trading for. He is not having a good year. In fact, it's the worst season of Gallen's career. 5.75 ERA in 17 starts this season. But this is a guy that has been top 5 Cy Young Award voting multiple times in his career. So let's go to 2022. That was his best season. Maybe actually a little, I'd say 22 was better. He was worth a 5.3 WAR, 31 starts, had a 2.54 ERA and an ERA plus of 158. He finished 5th in Cy Young voting that year. The following season had a 4.4 WAR and 210 innings pitched over 34 starts, a 3.26 FIP. So, ballpark factors, defense, everything like that. His ERA is actually even better than his 3.47 ERA on that season. And then again last year, just steady Eddie. 28 starts, 148 innings, not nearly as much of a workload compared to the 2 previous seasons for him, but a 3.65 ERA. So I don't know what has gone wrong for Zach Gallen here, but it has obviously not been a good year for him or for the Diamondbacks. Let's actually pull up his StatCast. That's or Baseball Savant, see what they have to say about him, if there's any noticeable changes to his arm angle or his pitch repertoire, because it's obviously not looking so good. See all this blue? Yeah, this is bad. You want all of this to be red. So that's a little concerning for him this year. But literally, if you just go back to 2024, I mean, everything looks infinitely better. You go to 2023 and wow, I mean, the dude was pitching run value, I'm not going to try to explain it. I just know it's an important thing that people like to talk about when you're referencing ball players and pitchers, but 98th percentile. 98th percentile in fastball run value, 93rd percentile in off-speed run value. So again, like, I'm not going to bore you with all that crap, but yeah, I think it's obviously been a real downfall for Zach Gallen here recently, but he is only a rental. He is a free agent at the end of this season. He is from Somerdale, New Jersey, so he's a local kid. So maybe bringing him here for the final few months of this season is exactly what the Mets need. Their pitching lab gets their hands on him. Maybe they correct him, get him back to that Cy Young form that he had for a couple of seasons out there in the desert with the D-backs. But I don't know what the trade cost is going to be for a guy like this, because he's pretty hard to peg. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's due the remainder of his arbitration deal that had $13.5 million value on it at the beginning of this season. So we're talking a little less than half when the Mets eventually, or if the Diamondbacks trade him. Again, this is a guy that in the past has garnered Cy Young attention, but it's this year has an ERA up above 5. So I'm not sure exactly what it would cost the Mets, but I'm thinking it's probably at minimum a top 15 prospect. If it turns into a conversation of Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong or Nolan McLean, forget it. Off the table, not interested, not for a guy that is having a bad season and that is a free agent at season's end. But if it's something closer to like a top 15 prospect, not one of our prized pitching prospect gems, then yeah, I'd be more interested. I unfortunately don't think that Blade Tidwell is going to be a starting pitcher in a big league rotation in the future. I just don't see it with him. I don't think he throws enough strikes. I don't think he's got the best stuff. He's got a couple of metrics on those breaking ball pitches that suggest he could have one or two really good ones. And if he pairs that with a good fastball and location, I could see him turning into a reliever, but I don't think he's going to be a starter. And I think many other teams feel that way. So I don't think Blade Tidwell is enough to get a trade done for Zach Gallen. But if you start it with a guy like Tidwell, and then we're throwing in someone in like the 15 to 25 range from our system, then yes, I think I'd be closer to getting that deal done with the Diamondbacks, and I personally would okay it, just depending on course who that other prospect would be going in the trade. Let's take a look at the chat real quick. D-Rel says, you're right, Explosive. You guys are, I love Explosive Diarrhea. Such a great name. D-Rel's 99/22 is low-key Yankee fan. I mean, he has to be. He's got a Yankees logo. He's doing 99/22 as in Judge over Soto. It might be John from Maspeth, the guy that is all over Twitter crapping on the Mets, who claims to be a Yankees fan, but all I ever see him is outside of Citi Field and at Mets games. So I think that guy is low-key a Mets fan for sure. But Stoney says D-Rels is a Mets fan. He's a Mets fan also, I think, because he said extend Pete, and I agree with that. D-Rel says, I don't know, Stoney, a lot of so-called Met fans be low-key Yankee fans. That is not me. I hate the Yankees. I don't hate them more than the Dodgers. That is my number one most hated team, but in order, it's probably Dodgers, Yankees, Braves, Phillies. It's close, though. The Braves, I mean, after that stretch that we just had against them totally reminded me how much I hate Atlanta and the Braves. So I don't know. That is tough for me to give you an accurate rundown of my most hated teams. But I will say this: I was hate watching the Yankees earlier, and I was pretty pumped for that George Springer grand slam. Let's see. Carson says Mitch Keller is on my list. They need heavy strike throwers. Carson would be the best person to have in here doing this with me because he knows everything there is to need to know about starting pitching, about just pitching in general and all the advanced metrics and whatnot. So he would actually be great for this stream. If you guys don't know Carson's work from Mets Weekly, go check out Mets Weekly. I used to be a part of that panel, but they do a really great job, him and Frank over there. So be sure to go check out their channel and all their content. But let's take a look at Mitch Keller, because Mitch Keller absolutely shoved it against the Mets in his 2 starts this year. Actually, Keller only pitched in the first inning of that game before the rain delay, but he did pitch pretty well against them at Citi Field as well earlier in May. But overall on the season for Mitch Keller, Over 17 starts, a 3.90 ERA. He is just under 100 innings for the season, has an ERA plus of 109. This is a career ERA plus of 95, but also you're not factoring, if you don't factor in his two worst seasons, one of them coming as a rookie where he made 11 starts and did not go well. He had a ERA plus 61 that year. And then in 2021, had an ERA plus of 69. 69. So you take those two away, and it's probably a much more respectable ERA plus of like 104, 105, which is just above average, right? And that's pretty much all the Mets are asking for at this point out of their rotation. What can they get that will just get them 5 to 6 innings on a nightly basis when he goes out there and keeps them competitive in these games? Because lately that is not what they have been getting from this starting rotation. Part of it is due to regression to the norm with some guys, and part of it, of course, due to the injuries. But with Griffin Canning now done for the year, with, in my opinion, Tyler McGill's season hanging in the balance, because, I mean, anytime you're talking about elbow tendonitis in your pitching arm, that screams Tommy John surgery to me. He's also not very good. We have Frankie Montas, who we saw a really good season debut. Then we saw him get crapped on by the Pirates on Sunday. Who knows what Montas is? And then Sean Manaea with his setback. Kodai Senga, who is made of glass and always seemingly getting injured on these weird plays. The Mets absolutely need someone that is steady, Eddie, and reliable. It does not need to be an ace, but it does need to be someone that they can rely on to go out every 5 days and take the ball for this team. So I'm going to go to Mitch Keller's advanced metrics here. Not that I'll be able to even really give you any more information on them. I'm just going to show you them and you guys can decide for yourself. But pretty solid. A lot of red. We like the red on Baseball Savant's page. That is what you're looking for. So that is this season. Last year, yikes, not so good. I could get into the nitty gritty and talk about if he changed his arm angle or if he's throwing certain pitches more this year than he was last year. That does appear to be the case. Last year, he was throwing his fastball 30% of the time, his slider 22% of the time. This year in 2025, using a four-seamer 34% of the time and a sweeper 19% of the time. Those are his two most thrown pitches. So a little bit different than what he was doing last year, and obviously it is paying off for him. I don't know what the Pirates are going to be looking for in return on a trade for Mitch Keller. Let's take a look at his contract situation. He is signed through 2028. So we are talking a long-term commitment to this guy. This is marriage, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't a rental. This isn't one more year after this one. No, this is 3 more years after this. This is a guy that the Pirates obviously believed in and handed him a 5-year extension just 2 years ago. So he is due $77 million over a 5-year contract that takes him through the end of the 2028 season. So that is going to make this a little more expensive of a contract or of a trade if the Mets were to pursue Mitch Keller to put into this rotation at the trade deadline. I like the player of Mitch Keller. I like the idea of putting him in this lineup. I am a little weary on whether David Stearns would actually commit to a long-term deal, essentially, for this guy. We know that David Stearns likes to find these bargain bin guys. A lot of them have worked out. A lot of them have not. I think he likes to maintain roster and financial flexibility, which has allowed him to go and sign guys like Severino and Manaea, and unfortunately, in the bad cases, guys like Frankie Montas, it appears, and like Adrian Hauser last season. But I do believe that David Stearns is almost afraid of commitment, if I'm being honest, outside of Juan Soto, right? He barely got Pete Alonso back here. It was kind of surprising to see him give 3 years, $75 million to Sean Manaea the way he did this past offseason. But does he want to corner himself in to another commitment with Mitch Keller for the next 3 years? I'm not so sure if that's going to be the case, but overall, I mean, this is the kind of guy that we're talking about that would be great to add to this rotation. Let's take a look at the chat over here. Carson says he's a rotation stabilizer, throw strikes, nothing special, but way more penciled in for quality than Blackburn. Well said, Carson. 100% agree with you on all that. Again, the only thing I think that could be a holdup is the fact that he is under team control through 2028, which, yeah, if he keeps pitching the way he is right now, that's awesome. The Mets just penciled in their 4th starter for the next 3 years. But I don't know if David Stearns is going to be willing to do that, and I don't know what the cost would be in terms of a trade with Pittsburgh to be getting 3 years of control for a guy that has established himself as a pretty solid major league starter out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Good for you, Mitch Kelly. He looks like he's from Iowa, doesn't he? You could just, this is the most Iowa looking guy I've ever seen in my life. This dude grew up on a farm. The nearest Starbucks was 60 miles away from him. You love to see it. You love those Midwest boys, right? Let's see, 99/22. The only realistic trade Stearns would do is for guys in their walk year like Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen. Stearns will not take on other contracts. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. Last year, I really, truly don't think David Stearns believed in that team. And that is why the trade deadline was so underwhelming. They got Jesse Winker, which was very nice, probably the biggest pickup that they did. And then obviously they brought Jose Iglesias up to the big league roster. They traded for Ryan Stanek and Phil Maton. But really, outside of that, it was a pretty underwhelming deadline. And that was because of how they performed in the first half. So my question is, after being the best team in baseball for the first 2 months of this season and then hitting this rut that they have been in for the last 3 weeks, what does David Stearns do at this year's deadline? Personally, I think Steve Cohen will not be too happy if the Mets continue to fade in the first year of Juan Soto's gargantuan contract. So I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Cohen is telling him, put the pedal to the metal, put the metal to the pedal, whatever the saying is, and really get aggressive at this year's trade deadline, but without sacrificing the future, without selling the farm and committing to bad long-term deals. So good point by 99/22, but I do tend to agree, even in the case of a guy like Mitch Keller, who may not be all too expensive. I think the 3 years of commitment could be something that dissuades Stearns from pursuing a guy like him, despite the fact that he checks all the boxes of what we're looking for. Like Carson said, strike thrower, nothing special, but he gets the job done. D-Rail says, yeah, I believe in 2 to 3 year contracts for pitchers. D-Rail's also said, I agree with Stearns on that. I agree with Stearns on. Jose Lopez Moya, what is up, my man? Well, let's see what version of the Mets we'll see tomorrow when they play that doubleheader. If you're a believer, get on your knees and pray a lot. Yes. Pray, and then pray again, because the Mets need God right now. They need a baptism, and not by fire, because we've already got that the last 3 weeks and it has sucked. So hopefully the beginning of the turnaround is tomorrow. God just wanted to make us wait a little bit longer today with the rain out. Stoney says, LOL. Carson, he's you already said that. Sorry, I already read that. 99/22. Losing Griffin Canning was a huge blow for us because now we are forced to get a pitcher, and we all know David Stern doesn't like giving up prospects. Yeah, well, again, that's why I think the Mets need to be smart, not flashy. That's why I am not beating the drum for a guy like Sandy Alcantara or Jacob deGrom, who, again, I don't even think is available. I think the Mets need to focus on getting guys kind of in this Mitch Keller type of vein, and then also getting some legitimate bats for this lineup. That is actually my bigger concern. And let's not forget the bullpen, which has just been ruined by how much it has had to pitch these first 2 months. No more Chris Davinsky, no more Ty Adcock, no more Tyler Zuber. Can't be doing that much longer. It's not working. Let's see. Jose Lopez says, forget it. Stingy Stearns will go after low-tier player, the so-called reclamation project. Look, I think he gets a bad reputation for this whole bargain bin hunting, dumpster diving David Stearns kind of mantra that fans have about him. Yes, he will do that during the offseason and heading into a season, but I do believe if he truly believes that this is a World Series capable team, he will pull the trigger on smart moves. I'm not saying he's going to go out and make the Yoenis Cespedes type trade from 2015, but if there is any signs that point to this being a true title contender, I do believe David Stearns will strike at the right opportunity for big names that will stick on this MLB roster. We even just heard it from some of the MLB insiders this week that said they believe the Mets will will be aggressive at the trade deadline. So that is a very good sign to hear from the guys in the know. Let's see. 99/22, and you can't put all the money towards Sevy because we need bullpen arms. Brazaban's regressing and our bullpen is getting weaker. Yep, without a doubt. Brazaban obviously was worked into the ground, and now we are seeing the ill effects of how much the Mets had to rely on him. He was so great for the first 2 months. He was closing games, he was pitching long relief, he was opening games, he was getting saves. I mean, dude did it all, and unfortunately it looks like it's catching up to him, and he has now become as unreliable as anybody else in that bullpen. Sad to say. It's still in there somewhere, but the dude can't be pitching every freaking time. The Mets need to get out of a jam. Same goes for Reed Garrett. They definitely need some major bullpen help. I've been talking about it for a long time now. I want Aroldis Chapman. I want the Red Sox to keep losing because Aroldis Chapman would be such a perfect fit in the wake of losing AJ Minter. Your real only true lefty in this pen has been gone and down for over 2 months now, and we have been trying to find that guy. Jose Castillo did not work. They DFA'd him. He did pass through waivers. He is in AAA, so he is still with the organization, which is good to know, I guess, as a backup plan. But Aroldis Chapman would go a long way toward helping the Mets fix their bullpen problems, but he's just one arm. They need at least 2 guys like that, in my opinion. Kenley Jansen, maybe you take a waiver on him, kind of the same way like they did with Ryan Stanek and Phil Maton last year. Guys toward the end of their career, but with postseason experience that are not pitching all that great right now. That might be a secondary move to a guy like Chapman that I would like, but bullpen definitely cannot be ignored any longer. Jose Lopez says, Cohen needs to take some responsibility from Stingy Stearns and name an actual GM to make the trades because Stingy Stearns will waste this coming trade deadline. Hey, let's give it some time. We have not seen any moves outside of the Rafi Devers trade. That was a weird situation, obviously, with his whole relationship deteriorating with the organization, but there's not been any other moves made for the most part, none significant, at least for any of the sellers or for the contenders. So let's give it some time. We will reevaluate at the end of the deadline. Hopefully that is not the case. 99/22. How about Jalen Beeks from the D-backs? He's only making $1.25 million, and he's a lefty, would be a great fit, and he has good baseball savant numbers. Okay, let me check him out here in a second. Jose says Chapman and Duran would help the Mets. I am not interested in Jarren Duran. I have said that many times. Dude is having a bad year. He is under contract 2 more years. Not that I don't believe that he could turn into or continue to, ascend into one of the better center fielders in baseball, which is the trajectory he was on in 23 and 24, but it's going to be the cost of that trade. It's going to start with Carson Bengy. So if you like Carson Bengy, who is one of the most toolsy hitting outfielders in the Mets system, and I believe will be one of the top 50 prospects by year's end, then kiss him goodbye, because that is exactly who the Red Sox will be asking for in that trade for Jarren Duran, and I just don't know if that is something I want to give up. Before I get to Jalen Beeks, let me take a look here at Merrill Kelly, who you also suggested 99/22. So Merrill Kelly, righty out of Houston, Texas. He is 36 years old now. Hard to believe, man. He has been pitching for a while. It seems 2019 is when he debuted. He has spent his entire career with the Diamondbacks, and this is a very similar guy to Mitch Keller. He is not flashy. He has not got dominant stuff. He is not an ace, but he takes the ball every 5th day and he gets the job done. 33 starts in 2022. That was probably his best season considering how many starts he made. 2023 might have actually been a touch better, but in less innings. But 3.37 ERA in 2022 over 33 starts. The season after that, he followed it up with 30 starts over 177 innings and had a 3.29 ERA. His ERA plus in 2023 was 133. It was 119 in 2022. Last year, not as great, 4.03 ERA. The FIP was actually higher at 4.25, so maybe it was just he had a really bad year because ballpark factors defense actually suggests he was pitching even worse than his ERA would suggest for that season. But bouncing back this season. 3.49 ERA over 98 innings so far, and an ERA plus of 119. Let's see his contract status and how that would all shake out in a potential trade. He is signed through the end of this year, so he would be a rental, only here for the remainder of 2025. This is right exactly in the vein of what we're looking for, if you ask me. Not an ace, not the flashiest stuff, but a guy that can hopefully take the ball for you every fifth day, give you a quality start, and allows you to compete nightly, that he's out there for you. That is all the Mets are really asking for at this point. An upgrade over Paul Blackburn. An upgrade over the version of Tyler McGill we started to see there before he got injured. An upgrade over what we're all fearful is the true Frankie Montas, which is what we saw Sunday when he coughed up 5 runs in the first inning to the worst offense in baseball. So this is exactly what I think the Mets should be eyeing. Look, there are a lot of needs this team needs to fill in all 3 facets of the game: the rotation, the bullpen, and the lineup. Potentially more than anything, the lineup. You cannot just give your full undivided attention to trying to get a Sandy Alcantara or an ace, a guy that only pitches once every 5 days. They need to spread the wealth at this year's trade deadline and improve in all of those areas. That is why I think a guy like Merrill Kelly, like Mitch Keller, like Luis Severino, though that one's a little more complicated with his contract, are the types of arms the Mets should be looking at the deadline to fill in their rotation. Carson says, I do think this is the year that Stearns dips into the youth capital with how much leash Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos, Acuna have been given. If he doesn't, then I don't know what the direction is. So that is a good point. None of those guys are David Stearns' guys, obviously. The only people that are David Stearns' guys are the ones that came in last year's draft. So Carson Bengi was his first overall pick. First round pick last year. But at this point, unfortunately, all of those guys you just listed, Carson, have no trade value. And I know you're not suggesting those guys will be the headliners of any trade, because they are not going to bring back much in a trade where they're headlining. But I will be interested to see if he does dip his toes into the deep end this year and really try to go for it at this year's deadline, and how it does involve those guys you just mentioned: Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez. I don't know. It's possible 1 or 2 of those names are included in a potential trade. I suggested, and I don't think this is nearly enough, but since we're on the topic of the Diamondbacks, for Eugenio Suarez, I started out with Blade Tidwell and Brett Beatty. And I think that's a massive underpay, if you ask me. I really do. And some people are saying, oh, the Diamondbacks aren't even that far out of the playoffs right now. Well, let's be honest, they're a sinking ship. No Corbin Burns, no closer. Can't think of his name right now. Corbin Carroll's on the injured list. 3 teams ahead of them in their own division. Anyway, I don't think Tidwell and Beatty is enough to get that deal done, but maybe with another throw-in kind of lottery ticket prospect, it could be. Because look at it this way: you're getting 4 more years of control from Brett Beatty. Maybe he finally establishes himself as a starting third baseman in this league with the Diamondbacks. You're getting Blade Tidwell that the D-backs could immediately put into their rotation right now, see what he is. So I don't hate that from the Diamondbacks perspective. I do still think it's not enough. There'd have to be another name going back to Arizona, but I don't think it's a terrible starting point for a trade that would bring the Mets a slugging third baseman. You move Vientos to DH. Suarez hits behind Pete in the 5 spot. I think that is one big trade that then, when you couple with getting Jesse Winker back more consistently as a DH on this team, Vientos trading some time with him, maybe Alvarez has figured something out down in AAA and starts hitting better than he has been in the beginning of this season, then we're starting to see a more complete lineup. But that's just one thing for this team. I went on a little bit of a tangent there. Sorry, guys. Let's see. 99/22 says, and Shelby Miller is only making $1 million. I could really see David Stearns getting both of them. Okay, so 99/22. I swear you're a Yankees fan, but you were making some really good suggestions. I love it. Let me check on those 2 names you just mentioned, Shelby Miller and Bleeks. Just give me a second to finish reading the chat here. Stoney, would you trade for Buxton with the Twins, Tony, if we had to get rid of some of these outfielders in a trade? I love Byron Buxton. He is just like Kodai Senga. He wakes up every day, falls down, and breaks every bone in his body. he is always hurt. I love Byron Buxton, but he is another one of those cases where he is under team control for at least 2 more years after this one, I believe. So that is going to be a little bit expensive. And again, I think that starts with Carson Bengi going back in a trade for him or for Jarren Duran. And I just don't know if I am willing to give up on that. If it's not Bengi, it might be Jet Williams. So that's another guy that I really don't want to see the Mets giving up in one of those trades. But at the end of the day, you got to give to get. I am not a prospect hugger. I'm just trying to paint the full picture for you, but not a bad idea. Yes, we have heard Byron Buxton's name circled out there with the Mets a little bit recently. Lane says, go Mets. What's up, Lane Kerner? How do you feel about the Mets? I feel horrible about them right now. They are killing me inside on a daily basis. Only not today because they didn't have to play. But look, they got to turn it around. They can't just ride the string out until the All-Star break coming up in 2 weeks or whatever it is. They've got to start turning it around now before the All-Star break. I'm not saying they got to go on a 10-game winning streak here, but they cannot continue to perform that the way they have. It's concerning about how the Mets even decide to handle the trade deadline if they continue to stumble at the pace that they have been for the last 3 weeks. So concern level is at a 10. Lane says, what is the news on Sean Manaea? You know what? That's a good question. Before I get back to looking at some of those trade ideas that 99/22 is giving me, let's take a look at the latest on Sean Manaea. He is set for a rehab start following the injury delay. That is according to SMY 4 hours ago. So yes, I believe that he is actually making a start today, if I'm not mistaken. And Jesse Winker is also in the lineup for the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. So that is a good sign. Let's see. Mets left-hander Sean Manaea, whose rehab was delayed a bit due to a loose body in his elbow, is set for his next rehab start. He will take the ball in Double-A Binghamton Tuesday night, so literally right now he is actually making a start for Double-A, or already has finished it. So yeah, that's the news on Sean Manaea. He pitched a rehab start tonight for the Rumble Ponies. And then also, like I mentioned, Jesse Winker started his rehab assignment, and he, I believe, played yesterday and is back in the lineup once again here today for Double-A. So really good signs on that front. And then if you guys are just tuning in, I said earlier that Carlos Mendoza said that Kodai Senga will throw a bullpen session or he threw one yesterday, and he is set to take pitcher fielding practice tomorrow, and if that goes well, that he will also begin a rehab assignment. So good news on the injury front for sure for this Mets team right now. Some of the guys, some of the key contributors in the rotation, the lineup with Winker, look like they are on the mend and hopefully getting back sooner than later. So there's the update on that. Carson says, I'd say the most likely kid to be dealt is Gilbert, with left field and right field locked down for years. So I'm not sure how other teams view Gilbert. I know he's got a really good OBP for Double-A, but he has not been hitting the ball with a lot of authority and power from what I understand, like they thought he was going to. I could be totally speaking out of my ass here. Let me double check this. Yeah, 8 home runs so far in 250 at-bats for Gilbert. 237 average, which I know some people don't care about batting average, Carson. 347 OBP, but I mean, look, it's a pretty lackluster 745 OPS with AAA. I'm sorry if I said Double-A. So, yeah, I mean, look, this is the guy I would most want to trade if it came down to it, but I don't know if he brings back the same type of return that a guy like Bengi or a guy like Jet Williams would. And I just think in terms of a trade with the Twins for Byron Buxton, or the hypothetical trade for Jarren Duran with Boston, those are the kind of names they will be seeking back for guys that were formerly and still could be some of the best at their position in all of baseball and have multiple years of control. But you know that better than anybody else, Carson. Stoney says, agree. And I heard Buxton is having a healthy year this year in a long time. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get 100 games out of that dude, and he is healthy now, which tells me if the Mets trade for him, he will immediately get hurt getting off the team bus. So I don't know if I want to play with that voodoo. PB9? Yeah, I think that's what it is. Does Stearns not include limited or no trade clauses? Lindor, Nimmo, and Sugar contracts were made before he came on board, I think. If I'm Pete, that's a non-negotiable. I'm not sure about the status of any of those deals. Honestly, which ones have, no trade clauses or anything like that. I really don't know. Yeah, I wish I could answer. I'm not going to go find that stuff right now. But yeah, I mean, look, like this roster is largely not David Stearns. He's inherited pretty much all of this roster and has just done the tinkering on the outside, of course, with the exception of signing Juan Soto, re-signing Sean Manaea this offseason. For the most part, not a whole lot of David Stearns' fingerprints on this Mets roster right now. So it does feel like this is a pivotal trade deadline where he dictates the course and direction this organization is heading in toward the future. So very interested to see how this is going to all go down. Jose Lopez Moya, this mess is all on Stearns. He structured the pitching staff, wasted the last trading deadline instead of trading for Garrett Crochet. A lot of Mets fans still mad about not trading for Garrett Crochet. I can understand why. He's been pretty solid for Boston, but there was obviously a little bit of caution with the cost of that trade and a guy that really has been a reliever his entire career. So I never really blamed Stearns for not jumping into those waters, if I'm being honest. PB9, thank you very much. First is this season and these trades. Yeah, I'm sorry. I really don't know what that means. Thank you very much. First is this season and these trades. Okay. 99/22. David Bednar is another guy. He's only owed around $2 million left. We see him in Pittsburgh the other day, and he has great savant numbers as well. All right, so let me get to these trades that 99/22 has been suggesting. So the first one was Jalen Beeks for the Diamondbacks. He is a reliever, and I mean, the Diamondbacks are ripe for the picking. I don't know if they're going to sell. I think they probably should, considering where they stand in their own division with 3 teams to climb, but they may not be wanting to quit 2 years after making the World Series with a nice little second half run that they had. They know as well as anybody else that it's not impossible to just make the dance, and if you're hot in October, you could turn it on and go all the way to the World Series. So Jalen Beeks is a lefty. He is 31 years old. He turns 32 in about 9 days. Happy birthday, Jalen Beeks. He is a free agent at the end of this year, making just $1.25 million this season with Arizona. Has a 4.74 ERA in 39 games for the Snakes. 38 innings pitched. ERA plus is 88. So not great traditional stats for Beeks this year. Last year was with Colorado, went over to Pittsburgh. It looks like it might have been a trade. It might have been he got DFA'd by Colorado, which is pretty rough. If you get DFA'd by the Rockies, you know you're really wearing it. And then he went to Pittsburgh to finish out his year, and he pitched better. 3.92 ERA over 26 appearances with the Pirates. But let's take a look at his Baseball Savant page. The Pirates take the lead over the Cardinals. Look at the Pirates, and it's Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, that Met killer. God damn it. I can't stand that guy. Baseball Savant, Jalen Beeks. Let's see if we can find it, huh? Guys, sound off in the chat. What do you think the Mets need to prioritize at this year's trade deadline? What would be your ideal dream trade? Drop it in the chat right now. I will respond to it and see if we are on the same page here. But here are Jalen Beeks' Baseball Savant numbers. Off-speed run value is in the 99th percentile. Oh boy, that's based on his changeup, which he throws 40% of the time. Not a lot of difference between velocity from his four-seamer to his changeup. 94.7 miles per hour on the fastball, 89 on the changeup. Really surprised he can get away with it as well as he does. But look, you know, this is kind of a similar type of name to what the Mets did with Phil Maton last year. Doesn't have the same history of postseason experience and success like Maton did. But, you know, this is one of those things where, hey, maybe the pitching lab, they get their hands on him. He turns it around. We thought maybe that was the case with Jose Castillo, though, and obviously not the case. So this would probably fall a little lower on my priority list, you know, and my excitement level about trying to fix this Mets bullpen. This is one of those secondary arms. This is like, okay, after they've already gotten a name like Aroldis Chapman. That's just an example. They're both lefties. That's not going to be the case, but the Mets definitely need a guy that is pitching very well right now and has postseason experience and success doing so. And then maybe you get a guy like Jalen Beeks to put into that bullpen as well. well. Hold on, let me go back to the chat. Carson says Binghamton was rained out, so Mania will make that rehab start tomorrow. Thank you for letting me know that, Carson. It's weird. It seems like everyone in the Northeast got rained out, but meanwhile, I'm watching this game, Pirates and Cardinals. Speak of the devil, Phil Maton on the mound just allowed the go-ahead run to score in the 8th inning, but the weather is beautiful there in Pittsburgh, but for whatever reason, the Mets get rained out in Queens tonight. Phillies get rained out in Philadelphia. Binghamton gets rained out. I believe another team had a doubleheader. Cincinnati and Boston are in a rain delay. I don't know where that game is being played at. I think in Boston, but for whatever reason, Pittsburgh going off without a hitch, and they are leading the Cardinals, looking to win, I believe, their 5th straight game. Then again, 3 of them came against the Mets, so I don't know if we really even count those. But let's see, 99/22, David Bednar, yes. But there was another guy you mentioned as well that I wanted to take a quick look at, Shelby Miller. Okay, so let's see what Shelby Miller is doing right now. So Shelby Miller, if you guys don't know, is the name the Braves sent to Arizona to get Dansby Swanson. That's his name. Yep. So thank the Arizona Diamondbacks for all of the pain that Dansby Swanson inflicted on the Mets as a member of the Braves, because this is who they sent for him. Let's see. St. Louis is when he began his career. He pitched with Atlanta, and then after that 2015 All-Star season, he gets traded to Arizona for Swanson, and he's bounced around a little bit. He is returned now for a second stint with the Diamondbacks, and so far this year is pitching really well in relief. 35 appearances, a 2.10 ERA. If you should be able to see that on my screen right here. Over 34 1/3 innings pitched. He has an ERA plus of 200. Woof, not bad. He pitched really well in relief for the Dodgers 2 years ago. 1.71 ERA over 36 games and 42 innings, an ERA plus of 163 in that year. We know he's a righty. He is now, 34 years old? Jeez, the dude came up so young, because, 2012 is the year he debuted. That's 13 years ago. So he was 21 when he made his major league debut. That is just insane for him. But, numbers are great this year. 0.99 whip. That is unreal. 39 strikeouts in 34 innings. You'd like that number to be a little bit higher from a high leverage reliever, but it's not bad. 0.8 home runs per 9. So he's limiting the long ball. 2.9 walks per 9. But 10.2 strikeouts per 9. Not bad. Not bad at all. But let's see. What is his baseball savant? Shelby Miller, baseball savant. All right. Here we go. I'm going to jump into this, guys, and then we're going to take a look at 1 or 2 more guys. Again, drop your dream trade for the Mets at this year's trade deadline, and we will talk about it. We will see if it's a good fit. I will give you my opinion on it, and we will go from there. But Shelby Miller's baseball savant page, a lot of red. We like the red. 97 percentile in chase percentage, 86 percentile in whiff percentage, extension. Carson loves extension. That's much he's reaching toward the plate essentially with his arm is at 90 in the 94th percentile. He's pitching at a 44-degree arm angle for those of you that care, but things are really good numbers from him. He's still got a pretty good mid-90s fastball. 95, he pairs it up with an 87 mile per hour splitter that he throws 27% of the time. So throwing the fastball 65% of the time, and then he really just works in these 3 breaking ball pitches or off-speed pitches, including the split here to keep hitters off balance. But let's take a look what he was doing last year. Obviously, those numbers not so good, but he wasn't throwing that slider that he is now pitching. It's a sweeper. What did he get rid of? What did he add this year? Okay, so he didn't have the sweeper last year. He has included that and is throwing it 7% of the time. So maybe that sweeper is a big reason for why he's been able to turn things around. And then real quick, let's see the 2023. He did not qualify for a lot of things. He did not pitch, I guess, as much in that season where he was really successful with the Dodgers, that 1.71 ERA, as you can see here on the left side of the screen. But Shelby Miller, yeah, definitely someone I'd be interested in. He's only a rental for the end of this year. He's only making $1 million this year. So in terms of luxury tax threshold, Steve Cohen, more than willing to pay the double price on what would be essentially $400,000 for the rest of this season. So not bad. Let's see. Hey, PB9, first time here. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe if you are not already. Daily Mets content here on my channel. Post-game recap after every single Mets game today. We're just doing something a little bit different, of course, because of the rain out. But let's see. 99/22, David Bednar. All right, I will get to David Bednar as well. Jose Lopez, remember that the Soto and Alonso signings were all done by Cohen. Stearns would have never done the two signings. I do tend to err on that opinion. Yes, I do tend to believe that is correct. And I said it in my stream the other day. I don't believe he would have signed Juan Soto if it were not for Steve Cohen's nudging or whatever, at the behest of Steve Cohen. I think that was his white whale, his Moby Dick, and nothing was going to stop Cohen from signing Juan Soto. And I don't believe that Stearns would have approached the offseason the same way if he had his druthers. But let's see. Stoney, what starting pitcher would you want to see the Mets try to trade for at the deadline, Tony? I mean, a few of these guys we just mentioned. I would love Luis Severino. I think that contract situation is a little difficult to navigate. I don't know if that's a realistic option. I really like the Mitch Keller idea. Again, he is under contract for 2 more seasons after this one. Don't know how Stearns and the Mets front office is going to feel about that. We also touched on Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. I would love Zach Gallen, all prices being equal, probably more than any of the other names we just mentioned. Obviously, he's having a down year, probably the worst of his career, easily the worst since arriving in Arizona. But if he could turn it back on and get back to the Cy Young caliber pitcher he has been throughout his career, that is something that I would definitely like to see the Mets pursue. That's one of those, hey, buy low kind of guys that has the potential. Maybe the pitching lab gets their hands on him, and all of a sudden the Mets did actually trade for an ace at this year's deadline. So those would probably be in order my 3 names I'm most interested in starting pitcher-wise. Zach Gallen, Mitch Keller, and Luis Severino. I think that is the way the Mets need to approach acquiring a starting pitcher for the rotation this year. Not the Sandy Alcantara's, not the Jacob deGroms, not guys like that are going to cost significant more and come with their own question marks surrounding them as well. Appreciate whoever just subscribed. You guys just heard the little Let's Go Mets FAN jingle. Let's see. E.E. Morrow, let's go Mets. Everything happens for a reason. Really? I hate that saying. No, I'm just kidding. But really? Because I'm not having such a good time with the Mets right now, if I'm being straight up. This has sucked for the last 3 weeks. Jose says, if Stearns doesn't solve the pitching problems in the coming trade deadline, then let's bring up the McLeans, the Sproats, Tong, and any other pitching prospects. All right. Well, we know Jonah Tong is not getting called to the big leagues this year. David Stearns just said that the other day. Brandon Sproat, that might be a possibility. I mean, if Paul Blackburn continues to pitch as poorly as he has, the Mets are going to have no choice but to have to try one of those prospects. They've already tried here with Blade Tidwell, who I am lowest on out of any of those names, and it has been results varying for him. But for the most part, I would say not so great of a first impression from Blade Tidwell. So you're not wrong about that, Jose. Guys, drop a trade suggestion in the chat and I will talk about it here on the stream. I haven't checked Discord at all, so if you guys tried calling in, I apologize. I just didn't have it open on my browser here, so I couldn't even check. If you do want to, there's still time, but honestly, we're not going to do calls today. We'll do them next time. I do them after every single Mets game. Oh, you guys are seeing all my desktop here. That's not what I want. Let me go to David Bednar real quick, who is actually on the mound right now trying to close this game out for the Pirates. They are leading 1-0, and he actually just walked the leadoff man and is behind 2-0 now on Lars Nootbaar for the Cardinals. So pretty timely for you to suggest David Bednar is a potential guy that the Mets should add to their bullpen. And I'm going to just go to this article from the Phillies fan blog because let's be honest, guys, the Mets are going to be competing with the Phillies for just about every name at this year's deadline. Anyone that the Mets are interested in, the Phillies are also going to have interest in. They lost Jose Alvarado to the 80-game suspension. He also will not be available for their postseason roster because of the PEDs he was caught using. So the Phillies are going to need help in their bullpen. Anyone the Mets are looking to acquire in the terms of relievers, you can bet the farm, Philadelphia is going to be in on that same type of trade as well. They're also going to be interested in getting a center fielder. We've heard them linked to Luis Robert, the Mets as well. Please go to Philly. I don't care. I don't want Luis Robert. Go ahead to Philly. But this Phillies blog, The Good Fight, suggests Phillies interested in David Bednar and Dennis Santana. So 2 guys in the Pirates bullpen that we saw this weekend against the Mets. Let's see. Bednar has been with them for many years. He's thrown 27 2/3 innings. He has struck out 40 and only walked 6. He has a 1.95 ERA. Let's see. As for Santana, this year he's pitched 36 innings, striking out 28 and walking only 6. He has a 1.50 ERA, a 1.8 B WAR for the season. So, I mean, these are 2 names that I definitely think help the Mets bullpen a long way toward getting more stable. I don't see the Mets acquiring both of them, but these are the kind of names we need the Mets to be trying to get. And then you can also get the Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek kind of guys that the Mets got at last year's deadline, but they need at least one surefire reliever that has been pitching lights out this year and has a history of doing it. David Bednar is coughing this game up as we speak. He just gave up a double down the left field line. Cardinals have second and third with 1 out in a 1-0 game. That's it. Not trading for Bednar. He's trash. Can't trade for him. No, I'm just kidding. Jose says, I will bid you good night because there's a lot of praying to be done for those poor New York Mets. Good night, Jose. Thank you for tuning in. Jose is always here in the chat and always picking on Stingy Stearns, as he loves to call him. Really, really appreciate you guys. Oh, I didn't mean to delete your message just now, PB9. I don't know why that happened. That was a mistake by me, but you didn't do anything wrong, so apologize for that. But guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. We've been going an hour and a half here. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Like I said, if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do that. Daily Mets content here on my channel. Post-game recap after every single game. We'll have a recap for game 1 tomorrow, and we will have another after game 2 of that doubleheader. Hopefully happy recaps with the Mets getting back on track. Maybe even a sweep. Who knows? Hopefully being done by the Mets and not to the Mets. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Be sure to leave this video a like. Really appreciate that. Tune in tomorrow. Post-game recaps after game 1, somewhere around 4 or 5 o'clock Eastern time. Then again after game 2. But until then, guys, I am Tony Metro. Stay true to the orange and blue.